trust your wife?
Oh, that's funny. You're gonna look funnier sucking my dick with no teeth.
Welcome back to the Notorious channel, your home for the obscure, cult classic movies and the occasional classic and blockbuster. Today's movie is perhaps the ultimate example of a cult film that's out there. The SHAWSHANK Redemption from 1994 is considered one of the greatest films of all time, and surprisingly an easy movie to get into, but initially the film was a flop.
Yeah, it's funny because it's so well known and it's revered, you know. It's funny that it was actually originally a flop, but Shawshank is actually the movie is based on a novella or short novel from Stephen King called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. And no one knew that this movie would become considered one of the greatest of all time. Arguably, this is like the perfect movie. Like if you're a movie lover, movie nerd like we are, this is arguably like the perfect movie. You know, its story is fantastic. It tells the story of how a banker named Andy Defurane ends up in the notorious Shawshank prison in Maine, and then he ends up befriending the fellow inmates, primarily the one named Red, who's played by Morgan Freeman, and his eventual escape from the prison and its corruption. You know, you got the fucking the dickhead prison guard Brian Hatley, and then the warden, the evil warden there. You know, this is one of my favorite movies to watch. Like, whenever I get a spare moment to watch movies, like just to watch a movie, this is like my go-to movie. Like, I'm sure those of you that follow our channel or tune into it casually, you probably have seen this movie. It's fucking amazing. Like, you know, if you haven't seen it, you have to go see this movie. It is absolutely, even in like, I mean, we're not like professional movie critics, but in our own humble opinions, this is one of the greatest movies ever fucking made, ever. Period. You know, like, you know, it's just holy shit. Now, speaking about its cult status, this is like a weird one to kind of peg in. It definitely has a strong cult following, that is for sure. So therefore, it qualifies as a cult movie. But because it's so like, it's not an obscure movie. Like, let's get that out of the way. It's not an obscure movie. Now, it's funny, you know, we all like feel-good stories. Shawshank does provide kind of like the ultimate feel-good story, but, you know, you gotta sprinkle in all the tragedies and heartbreak and bullshit to get to the feel-good, right? And then I already mentioned earlier, the evil prison guard, the warden, some of the other inmates that Defurane deals with. Primarily, there's a group called the Sisters.
Oh, not the Sisters.
Yeah, they're not real women, by the way. Yeah, we'll give you something to swallow if you're catching our drift here.
Gross.
I mean, this is a very quotable movie too. Like, you know, funny sucking my dick with no teeth, or like. But with all that creepy prison talk out of the way, you know, I mean, these are all like legit obstacles that Defurane has to like navigate through, and also the fact that his character is he's innocent. That's the ultimate. Well, it's not even a twist, but his character is innocent. He has to deal with all this bullshit of being in that prison, and then he's able to persevere at the end. I mean, ultimate win. At the end, of course. You know, all the bullshit he had to go with to get there sucked ass, but, you know, I mean, the dude pulled out a major W at the end there. But anyway, I'm going to be up to you to add some more tidbits.
Shawshank, in my opinion, is perhaps a perfect example of how to make a good movie. You have a very well written plot. You have very well written characters. You have a combination of joy and traumatic events, and sprinkle that all into one movie, and you get Shawshank. I think the reason why this movie has done so well is because the story is quite simple. It's about a man who we believe is innocently put to prison who tries to break out of prison, and at the end of the movie he succeeds in doing that, but not without bringing down the warden and helping out the other fellow inmates. They be friends. Be friends like be friends like I have not read the story that Stephen King wrote, but Stephen King, if he knew one day he was going to write the story based on one of the best movies of all time, he probably would do something different, because Stephen King, as we know, he's known for his horror movies, but every now and then he writes stories about that aren't horror related. For example, what's that one movie about this group of kids that try to find a dead body? What's it called?
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me. He wrote that. He also wrote another prison movie called The Green Mile. Which I will cover here soon. And then of course he wrote Shawshank, and then he wrote. I'm trying to think. There was another movie he wrote, and it was made in the 90s. Oh, well, was it? Well, it's not. Well, I think the same people who made Shawshank and Green Mile also made a movie called The Mess, and that to me is actually one of the more creepy horror films I've seen, and also perhaps one of the best examples of his horror movies being adapted to film. But generally, when a Stephen King novel that isn't horror based gets adapted into a film, it generally does well in the box office, or is remembered very well in the long run as a cult classic, or as a very well known film. What Shawshank is like I don't know how best to explain it. Stephen King knows how to write good stories, and occasionally a very good filmmaker comes across the stories, and they do their best to bring it to life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to cut you off, but I mean, you got to think about the characters in this movie. All right, again, you'll feel sorry for Dufresne. Again, he's wrongly convicted of a murder he did not do. Like he's in prison because they find him guilty of killing his wife. Because he found out she was cheating on him, which in fact, he find out later he's totally innocent of the crime. But all the other characters, like you got like a old senior citizen character named Brooks. You got a couple other. I can't think of the names off the top of my head now. You got Ellis Redding, or Red, by Morgan Freeman. And they play even like the other parts of become like that friendship group he's got there. They're all rememberable, and each actor plays their part really well. Like because like you can remember something about each of the supporting characters. Get the one that likes the Hank Williams music kind of thing, and then he's the one that tries to get them to work on the fucking roofs or whatever. Brooks, he was the old guy, and he was the prison librarian. Ellis Redding was the guy that can get you something. Like if there's something you wanted, he was like your fucking hookup man. They can get it for you. And then of course you have the other characters that they're rememberable for how terrible they are, such as the prison guard, the sisters, the warden. Because they're all corrupt and just evil in their own sadistic, twisted way. But I mean, you got to think about it this way. Aside from the Andy Defurane character, all the other inmates are actually in there for legit crimes they committed. I think the novel actually expands upon their backstories more. I know, the Red character is a murderer. Now, I don't remember if it was he killed somebody like a premeditated first-degree murder, but he's a killer nonetheless. And then one of the other ones was like a rapist or sexual offender, if I remember from the story correctly. Somehow, this movie gets you to feel for these people. You know, like you're on their side throughout all this. You know, that's great storytelling. That's great editing. That's a great script, screenplay. You know, all that is combined perfectly. Because normally, there's the people you want to cheer for or root for, especially like outside of the movie world, like in normal society. You know, you'd be like, ah, fuck them. You know, they got what they deserve. But like in a movie like this, when you could feel sorry for these people, you know, like it's just phenomenal. Like you want them to win. You want them to get out of the prison, you know. Especially the Red and Andy Defurane. You want them to get out. You know,
Well,
I just and of course when the warden, and the prison guard, played by Clancy Brown, they get the comeuppance at the end. Well deserved. And dude, the pacing of this movie. I mean, I'm sure there's little things to nitpick here and there. I think like they have the at one point, while he's locked up, this had to be sometime in the 60s, I think. It's like around like when the JFK assassination takes place. He gets the fuck, I forget the name of the lady, but it's the poster of the pinup lady. I want to say it's Raquel something.
or Welch.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't timeline accurate, but that's just being nitpicky. If you had to find something to nitpick about, it'd be like little minor, very minor inconsistencies.
Actually, that was accurate for the time because Andy Defurane escapes towards the end of the 60s, not during JFK.
Oh well.
Okay, so
Then fuck it. But I'm just saying, like, this is the perfect movie. Like, I'm just thinking, like, you get to find flaws. The only flaws would be like if you don't like the portrayals of the characters because you just don't like the way the actor does their job, or you feel like this character needed more screen time, that kind of stuff. Which those are fair, but I mean, it's well paced, well edited. I mean, they give enough screen time to all the other, I guess, major supporting characters to where like you remember most of them, of course, but not enough to kind of derail the main story. And of course, I mean, I'm surprised the movie didn't win Oscars. I mean, I'm sure it was nominated, but it didn't win any, or it didn't win. Like, I know for a fact, like, none of the actors won an Oscar for their portrayals in this movie, which is unfortunate. And as you already said earlier, that's well revered and well loved this movie is. It was a box office flop upon its initial release.